having my dad rave about the Lubavitcher Rebbe from the time I was born. Here I am, an American-born college boy, sitting, and there's the Rebbe right there. He asked me what I do, and I said, Gates of College. I'm going for a master's degree, and I'm taking up teaching. And he said, Ich habe gegangen zu college. And I said, what did you study? No, he said, my field was electrical engineering. He said, but I preferred to turn the lights on in people's souls.
Was sehr sicher, bei jeder Menschen in seiner Arbeit, wenn tut in dem, mit seinem, wie ein Mensch darf tun, es muss in die Kadruf der Kirche ist, wo der Eibischter hat ihm gegeben, wird nicht, was beleicht, nicht nur allein und sein Mischpoche und sein Stadt, nur die ganze Welt herum.
Every person has a soul, a Yiddish Neshama, and it's like a spark, like a flame. When I went home, he said he would like, if I could, to form groups of young people in one way or another, social activities, religious activities, bring them in to Jewish life, see that pilot light or that flame is lit, brightening it, illuminating it.
The Rebbe worked very hard to make me feel comfortable. I told him that the Hillel Rabbi had suggested that I might go and study in yeshiva there. So the Rebbe told me he thought it would be a good idea. I didn't have very much background. I barely remembered how to read Hebrew. What I tried to do was just sort of get to the bottom of what was here, what was motivating people, what it meant to really be a Jew like this, and so on and so forth. A little while later, basically, I wanted to go and visit some of my friends at Penn State, and I'd written to the Rebbe about going there or something. And the Rebbe suddenly called me into Yechidus after Meir. Rabbi Chadakov just tapped me on the shoulder and just pointed to the Rebbe's office. The Rebbe said to go back to my friends at Penn State and speak about the mitzvahs connected with Purim. I told the Rebbe I didn't want to set myself up as an example. So the Rebbe said to me in very clear, unmistakable terms, every Jew has to be an example, whether he likes it or not.
Das wird Licht, jeder einzelne Meister, der Eibischter, der Beschaffer von der alle Welten, hat angestellt die Welt als ein und einziger Mensch, durch ein und einzige Tat, Meister sein, oder Dibur oder Machshovo, kann wirken auf die ganze Welt, wie der Rambam bringt das Aris Plorer, heit in Absag din Halacha.
I taught a course in Hashkafa and Jewish philosophy. What is Judaism, basic concept of Judaism? I get a phone call, and it's from Lubavitch. I think it was Rabbi Groner. And he said, we understand you have a sabbatical. The Rebbe wants to meet with you. Rebbe wants to meet with you. You can imagine what a fantastic thing that is. He said, the Rebbe would like you to go around the world, and we want you to speak to me, Makar of Jews. I said, are you sure you have the right person? Do you know what I look like? I don't look like a Lubavitcher. I don't wear a black hat. I come in, I'm asked to be seated, and the Rebbe explains to me, was me wil van euch is to go to the Far East, Singapore, Bangkok, Hong Kong, Tokyo, Australia, New Zealand. Je zult redden ze Jiden, mekaar zijn Jiden, you should teach them. Tell them the things that you, as a Rav and a Melamed Torah, know could ignite the spark that's in their souls.
Die Eigenschaft von Licht ist doch, als sie verspricht sich herum und herum, in alle Kavim und in alle Richtungen. a bin nur mich stellt nicht weg, a Sach, was soll ich verhalten, ist auch demol beteva hoheit, in der Eigenschaft von Lichtigkeit ist, als sie hat nicht in Grenzen, wo sie da gerecht, at Katzvitevo.
After I came back, almost 3 months, being Makar of Jews of all kinds, I met with the Rebbe again. He said, and I knew this about you. You are a chassid in camouflage. You're a chassid in camouflage.
Wo das kann doch jeder, kann doch mal Spiel sein, in einer bestimmten Moos auf einer Ruhm.
My husband and I were leading a very social life. My husband was a doctor in the community, and we were invited to many parties. I told the Rebbe that I was very busy socially, but I felt empty inside, like I had a terrible void in my life. And he just looked at me and he said, "There's Judaism. You have your religion."
Bischaß nutzt seine Möglichkeiten in der Fulster Moos, wird a gesund vegashmis zu Beruchnis, der ähnliche Schleimus, a Seider Guf und Seider Nishomo, seinen wirksam und Tun und Peilen in der Fulster Moos, wo das wird umgetan und abgetan, wie sie darf zu sein, wenn nutzt es in der Fulster Moos, sein Spur und die Wirkung auf alle Menschen herum sich.
The Rebbe told me that my husband's a plastic surgeon and that he makes people beautiful on the outside and that I should make people beautiful on the inside. And I took that very seriously. I tried to give people spiritual meaning to their life. I would invite them to our house for Shabbos, and many people came. I would set the table days ahead of time so that when the people came to my house, I could try to fulfill some of the job that the Rebbe had given me, to give them some type of feeling for their religion.
Rebbe, thank you, and happy Hanukkah.
Happy birthday, lighting Hanukkah.
Thank you, Rebbe.
It must be lighting on the outside also.
Thank you, Rebbe.
That is the message of Hanukkah.
Thank you.
The light on the door in such a manner that it will light the street around your house.
Thank you, Rebbe. I need it in my neighborhood.
Yes, very much bless you.
Thank you.
Subsequently, every year at Hanukkah, we light this giant menorah that lights up a large portion of our street.
Die, wo der Eberste was eine Sache gewähnt, und hat sehr rumgelegt als Schlichus, als sie sollen können mal Spiel sein, auf eine Schune, oder auf eine Stadt, oder auf eine State, oder auf eine ganze Medina. Seine Wacke Schellele für Kirchen, giete der Eberste der richtig und genügende Kirches. Sie sollen das durchführen mit Peil.
So, ladies and gents, there you got a little bit of the Rebbe's perspective on Jewish PR, on getting the message out there, on emphasizing the significance, the importance of Hanukkah celebration, not just for ourselves, but to spread the light everywhere we go. And for us, as we discuss here in our shir, and as we discussed yesterday at great length, Hanukkah has many timeless messages for each of us in our lives. And so I think we're already holding a day 2 of Hanukkah. We've eaten lots of latkes, had lots of donuts, lit the candles, and you noticed that last night we lit more candles than the previous night. And that's part of our mission, every day to increase, to add more light in the world. My kids are asking for more Hanukkah gelt. more chocolate coins, which, by the way, whoever comes to the giant menorah lighting tonight, we will throw chocolate coins on you. We'll have live music. Come join us. The Israeli ambassador is supposed to be there. So that's going to be at Santon City, South Africa's tallest menorah, and I hope you'll all be there to be with us there. And I hope this brings back some childhood memories. Certainly watching the video we just watched, for me, was childhood memories because it brought me back to Hanukkah in the Rebbe's presence. You think about, you close your eyes for a moment and think about, remember the Hanukkah of your youth. Go back to a time when perhaps sometimes night seemed so dark and we gathered around the Hanukkah menorah and the candles were burning so brightly. And even today, as the situation is constantly volatile, changing in different directions, and there we think about that little bit of light, that just little bit of light that radiates hope and love and realizing things will get better. We think about Hanukkah, the fondest memories that we have, filled with traditions, and most importantly, I think it reminds us of the heroism in the face of adversity. If you think about what's going on out there in the world, how South Africa is being attacked by all these countries, the knee-jerk reactions that we're the super spreader, but we are a super spreader. We're a super spreader of light. We're a super spreader of goodness, of kindness, of all good things. But one of the things that we at Chabad do, and was emphasized in the video we just watched, is the public menorah lightings that the Rebbe initiated. It didn't exist before. Yes, the Gemara, the halacha says we should light our menorahs on the outside, at the window, at the doorway. But the giant menorahs everywhere. I mean, this picture's outside the White House, and there's so many giant menorahs everywhere you go. We have the biggest one outside Santon City. That is something that is certainly new. And I want to take a moment to read to you a little snippet from this book it's called The Rebbe's Army. It's a book by Sue Fishkoff. And in this book, let me just find it here. She writes, I'm just going to give you a little quote. It's actually from 21 years ago. But it says like this. All in all, in that year, in 2000, Chabad organized hundreds of public menorah lightings in 45 states and Puerto Rico, and in close to 60 foreign countries. In New York City alone, Chabad lit 30 giant menorahs in highly visible outdoor locations, and an additional 300 throughout the metropolitan area. By the way, I have to say those numbers have multiplied who knows how many times since 21 years ago, nearly 22 years ago. The major international lightings, Paris, Melbourne, Washington, D.C., Jerusalem, were streamed live on the internet by Chabad headquarters in Brooklyn. Just to think, streamed live back in 2000. Think about how we stream it today here on Zoom, Facebook Live. Last night it was pouring rain and we still went ahead and did it. Anyways, just to think about it. The almost surreal sight of Russian President Vladimir Putin helping to light the silver menorah at Chabad's Jewish Community Center in Moscow as he wished the Jewish people a happy and prosperous year. So just a little excerpt from what the menorah lightings are like. You think about these jumbo menorahs, they're really hard to miss, I think. Certainly ours at Santon City, certainly ours outside our shul. There's one outside at Norwood Mall. We here at Chabad House have put up about 30 of them around Johannesburg alone. At Kosher World, you'll find a giant menorah. Then we put up in about 12 shopping centers. I personally put up in multiple retirement facilities. And it's all over. We're all over the place. They're big, they're bright, and if you come to the menorah lighting in the evening tonight, we'll have live music, we'll have a gelt drop, Israeli ambassador, menorah kits for anybody who needs. So if you go to any of the menorah lightings, I think it's a bold statement about Hanukkah. You can't miss it. My question to you is, have you ever felt uncomfortable about the menorah? Have you ever felt that it's a bit ostentatious? Right? Do you ever feel like it's a bit much? As if we're trying to force the miracle of lights and everybody walking around and anybody trying to shop at Santon City to do their regular shopping. Menorahs are supposed to be lit from the halachic stance in the comfort of our home, to be seen from the window outside, indeed, as well. Why is it so important to have these public menorahs? Why did the Rebbe come up with this campaign of public menorahs everywhere? That you could see is menorah at Kosher World, and that's a menorah at the courthouse. Why do we do this? For what reason? Why is it so important to have them? And I forget, did you look at my car? Do you see how many other rabbis have the menorahs on their cars? By the way, it's not so easy to get through garages. I already broke it once, thanks to Gershi in our shul. Got it fixed up. But you have these high-profile menorah lightings all over the place. Let me share this with you. I'm just going to pick it up on Google. Here's what it says on Wikipedia. I'm just going to read it off the computer. There's been a controversy with the public display and lightings of the menorah. In 1989, the county of Allenhigh, with the support of Chabad, won in the United States Supreme Court against the ACLU in country of Allenhigh versus ACLU over the display of Chabad on public menorahs. So this is basically talking about the controversy about menorahs going on around in many places. So without getting into the particulars of all these various stories, but you notice that it caused some kind of controversy, yet the Rebbe went ahead with it and still insisted that we light these menorahs publicly. It's sort of an in-your-face Judaism, which is what Chabad does in many places around the world. Why does Chabad put all this emphasis on public menorahs? Is this some sort of Chabad agenda? Do we have some stock in a giant menorah company? Let me assure you we don't. We make these menorahs special. We build them. And I'm very grateful to the builder of our giant menorah at Santon City, 7 meters tall, and to Easy Access Company, who lend us their cherry picker into Santon City for allowing us to place it there. It takes a lot of work getting this together. And I give the credit to Rabbi Katz here in our office, who has been doing this for many years and help making sure that all these menorahs are able to be where they are. So what I wanted to do with you today, and maybe we'll have to continue tomorrow, is to take a look behind the scenes to discover the halachic and the religious foundation for doing these menorahs in the public sphere. Let's try to understand the background of this, because it's obviously a recent phenomenon, and to understand where it comes from. Now, let's begin by just looking at the halacha. There are the Shulchan Aruch and the Gemara. It talks about the importance of Hanukkah and the menorah, what it's about, celebrating the festival. So we read a little bit about it the other day. Somebody's telling me that they can't in. I don't know what to do. I can't multitask again. Okay, so it says on the Shulchan Aruch, Ner Chanukah Menichai al Pesach Hasamuch l'Reshus Harabim. That the Chanukah menorah, says the Shulchan Aruch, is to place it outside the door closest to the public dabin. If the house is open to the street, it should be next to the door. If the house is open to a courtyard, it should be at the entrance of the courtyard. Basically, the halacha, the Talmud, and the Shulchan Aruch is telling us it should be as publicly displayed as possible, so that as many people could see the story, because the purpose why we light the Chanukah menorah is called Persume Nisa, to publicize the miracle. But the Shulchan Aruch says, in times of danger, and unfortunately many eras were dangerous, so then you can move it inside your house so that nobody will attack you. Now, why is the menorah supposed to be so public? Because we want people to see the miracle. It's called Persume Nisa, to publicize the miracle. We want that the miracle should be publicized. So lighting the menorah is not just a mitzvah to commemorate the ancient events that we're just doing for our families. It has to be publicized. We want to promote awareness of the miracles that God performs that happened so long ago. That's why we do it so publicly. And since spreading the awareness of Hanukkah is a key component of the mitzvah, our sages instituted these various details in the performance of the mitzvah, that it should be so public that everybody should see it, called Pesumei Nisa. Now that's why the Talmudic passage tells us that the best place to light the menorah is at your doorway or at the window. So many people could see it. It's only because there were dangerous times that people lived in that we moved it inside. But if you're looking at the core Jewish law, we do it as public as possible. Now, the idea of Pesumei Nisa, it says in the Shulchan Aruch that we kindle the menorah in the shul to promote the miracle. Now, understandably, in the shul, it's a Jewish community center, right? It's a meeting place of Jewish people. The Hebrew word for shul is Beit HaKnesset. So that's a more accurate term. It's a gathering place. What better way to publicize the miracle than to light the menorah at the shul, where all the Jewish people who come to the shul will be reminded about the miracle. So now obviously from that context in the Shulchan Aruch, it's talking about that Jewish people should see the miracle, should know about it. Sorry, what's missing? There we go. The idea is that the Jewish people will see it because you're doing it in a shul. But in today's day and age, where most Jews are not found in the shul, unfortunately, so yes, there is still a measure of publicity if you light the menorah in the shul for those who come to shul. But that's why the Rebbe brought it outside the shul, into the public spaces. Because there's probably a lot more Jews shopping at Santon City than are coming into the shul in Santon Central or any other shul. So, get a little creative. Put a giant menorah outside. Make it as jumbo as possible. And give out menorah kits and give out latkes and give out donuts and put on live music. Do what it takes and you'll get more people involved. So perhaps that was the way the Rebbe saw it. But I think it wasn't only about for Jewish people to see it. I think the Rebbe wanted to publicize the miracle, God's miracle, for everyone to see. Let me read it to you in the Rebbe's words himself. In a public talk, in a public address that he gave in 1987. And he says, the Gemara tells us the requirement is to place the menorah on the outside to publicize the miracle. Certainly, in addition to lighting the menorah in your own home, the menorah is actually lit outside in a public space to publicize it. And the Rebbe goes on here in his talk to say how we need more light in the world, and we could dispel the darkness with more light. So the fact that you're lighting inside your house on the outside is taking the light that you yourself have at home and you're spreading it to all those around you. Now, that's one angle, and it's true that the menorah will have more visibility in the public domain. The menorah becomes exposed to the greater world as well, and this is a major debate. What's happening is we're inviting not just Jewish people to be part of the Festival of Lights, but everybody to be part of it. All people. Now let me ask you, is Hanukkah a Jewish holiday? Or is it a holiday for everyone? Right? The public domain doesn't belong to us. So why are we parading our sacred rituals in a public space? If you really want to perform Pesumei Nisa, as it has been throughout the centuries, where you lit it in the shul, because you want the Jewish people to be reminded of the miracles, then let's place giant menorahs only at the shuls. Where did the Rebbe come up with this idea? Which obviously I'm going to share with you his idea behind it. And as you saw in the video, of in the public eye, in the public sphere, in the public domain. What's this all about? Why was he trying to promote it to everyone, Jews and non-Jews alike? So, obviously we understand that there is an aspect of publicizing the miracle. My question to you is, why are we including the Gentile population as well? And the answer to this question is predicated upon a much greater and deeper question that Judaism has had to grapple with in the last century at least. In fact, some would say that there has been a fierce debate going on for some time now about this. And I want to turn our clock back a little bit, a few hundred years, to the moment in time when the ghetto walls that had surrounded Jews for centuries, when those were torn asunder. And for many centuries, as we know, Jews lived among non-Jews. We lived in society, but somehow we always remained apart from the world. Yes, we lived with others. We lived in the same neighborhoods. We lived in the same communities. But we always remained distinct. The Jews perhaps lived in ghettos, not by our own choice, but we were stuck there. I think in general, communities like to live with each other. There are Jewish neighborhoods and there are Chinese neighborhoods. And there are Italian neighborhoods and there are African neighborhoods. Anywhere you go in the world, you'll always find that people like to live with their own. And in many communities, especially where there were ghettos, it meant that there were physical walls that separated the Jews from the greater population. Now, I accept that we like to live with each other. I don't accept when it's imposed upon us. That's what I don't accept. Even when there were no concrete walls, the social and communal walls still divided between Jew and Gentile. It was like that throughout many, many years of history. Jews in many countries were second-class citizens. There were all types of decrees and laws of discrimination against us. So that's the way it was for many years until along came, maybe 2-3 centuries ago, an era of emancipation. Napoleon was promising it to the Jews of France and Western Europe, and it started all of a sudden in England where Jews were getting their rights, and there was the, what is that called, the Carta, what was that called again, where they declared rules of freedom, of liberty for all. Of course, America was like that from the outset, even though anti-Semitism existed, even though there were many places that barred Jews. I mean, yesterday we had a big Hanukkah party at Rankislach, the retirement village, and it was interesting, we had maybe 70 seniors who came. And they were telling me that a number of years ago, this would be unimaginable to have a Hanukkah party at Rankislachta because Rankislachta was built by these upper crust Afrikaners who didn't want Jews. No Jews were allowed in Rankislachta at some stage. That's what I was told. And now we had a Hanukkah party with 70. Now, the truth is, I think there's well over 300 Jews living at Rankislachta, so we didn't have everyone there. We should have had a lot more people. But all of a sudden, Jews had a right to vote. Jews were being less discriminated against. Finally, we were being accepted within society. It was a big deal. And, it took time for other communities to be accepted in society. I mean, thanks to Martin Luther King's dream, he was able to fight for the rights of the black community in America. And here in South Africa, that there's democracies, it's fresh. It's not even, 25 years old? 26, no, 94, 27 years old. That's it. So, I'm not going to talk about other civilizations. We'll talk about ourselves. How do we react to this new state of affairs? In what direction are we meant to move? All of a sudden, where Jews are being accepted, where we had freedom of religion, for many Jews, it turned into freedom from religion. Instead of being proud of our identity, of our heritage, many Jews all of a sudden were so glad to be accepted into society that they tried to outgoy the goy, so to say, to be more Gentile than the Gentile. In Germany, being more German than the Germans. It didn't help us. In the Holocaust, they discriminated against all of us. As time went on, you had two distinct camps that eventually developed. And I mean, obviously it's an oversimplification, but I'm trying to, I guess it's an accurate enough way to serve the purposes for our discussion. On the one hand, we had one group of Jews who advocated becoming members of greater society. They embraced the humanistic notion of all people being born equal, and that we should celebrate that freedom. Don't be anymore in the ghetto. Get out of the ghetto walls. For those people, the greatest boon for the Jewish people was to be an active part of civilization. And what happened? They joined everybody else. Once the ghetto walls had been removed, they assimilated into society. That was their game. On the road to adaptation, unfortunately, it became part of the thing to lose some of those unique qualities. I remember telling a little story, a bit of the Galechta, but this Jew who came from Lithuania to South Africa back in the late 1800s came ahead of his family. And before he was a religious Jew, he had on payas, he had a beard, wears yarmulke proudly, his tzitzis, put on tefillin every day. But as he was on the boat coming to South Africa, seeing the Cape Peninsula, his friend said to him, listen, you're in a new Medina. You're going to have to change your ways. And they convinced him not to wear the tefillin anymore, to get a haircut, shave the beard, stop wearing the yarmulke and tzitzis. Can't put a mezuzah, you can't be up, promoting publicly that you're Jewish. Anyways, he's working hard in his newfound country in South Africa. Eventually, he saved up enough money to start bringing his family over. First, his mother came to set up shop. And his mother couldn't believe it when she saw her son at the harbor. She's greeting him there. She said, Oy, my Yankel, was geshen? Where's your yarmulke, your tzitzis, your payas, your beard? She says, Ma, it's a new country, South Africa, Golden Medina. We have to assimilate into society. She says, I can't believe it. She comes to the house, Yankel, mezuzah, what's going on? She comes in, she opens the fridge to eat something. This chazarai there, it's not kosher. She says, Geval geschrigen. Yankel, tell me, are you still circumcised? That's what was going on. Many people were trying to just blend into society, into culture of the world, unfortunately. And that didn't serve us very well. In fact, let me read to you here from Chief Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sachs. He says, in place of assimilation and segregation, we need to argue the case for a Judaism that engages with the world. The case is not new. It is set out at the dawn of our history in three striking biblical portraits: Noach, Abraham, and Lot. Lot chose a way of assimilation. He was Avram's nephew, right? But he chose to be assimilated. He tried to merge into the society, into Sodom, which he had chosen to live. His daughters married local men. We see Lot at the beginning. What does the Torah describe? Sitting at the city gate, where Rashi tells us that he had been appointed a judge. Superficially, he seemed to have been accepted. But he discovered otherwise. Having welcomed stranger into his house, he found himself surrounded by an an angry mob, demanding that he hand them over. While he refuses, the mob says, this one came here as an immigrant, and now all of a sudden, he has set himself up as a judge. Okay, think about anti-Semitism. That's back already with Lot, Avram's nephew. When the angels urge him to leave, he delays, faithfully trapped by his own ambivalence as to his real identity. Only when the angels drag him and his daughters are they lives saved. So what is Rabbi Sachs portraying here? This ambivalence that Lot has, the same conundrum that many Jews face. Am I part of society? Am I proudly Jewish? Which one am I? And that's what happened. Many of the people had their hopes up. They're accepted into society. They could join the clubs. They could go to university. And let's just keep our Judaism low profile. In fact, there was an expression Jews of Germany had when they felt emancipated. We'll be Jewish at home and we'll be like the Gentiles in the streets. But what do you think happens? It eventually seeps into the home and they forget about what it means. And they thought that anti-Semitism would skip them. Overall, the assimilated Jew was accepted within the wider society. But when the Nazis came to power, they were no less safe than the rest of us. In other societies, like in America, they were safer. But you know what they lost? What they suffered was their Judaism. Many of them, their children, their grandchildren, no longer Jewish. Because they lost their sense of Yiddishkeit. That was the question. What's my identity? They lost their identity. Am I a Jew or am I a citizen of the world? If I want to be totally accepted, first I have to assimilate. If you look at the melting pot of society, the beauty about a rainbow nation that we have here in South Africa is that it's all stripes and colors, that everyone's embraced and accepted. That's the beauty of what Madiba of Nelson Mandela did for this country. There was no bloodshed. Yes, I know there's crime and problems. Every country has its problems. Yes, there's corruption. You know what? In other places, it's more sophisticated corruption. Okay? Here we have more transparent corruption. All right? I accept that. But the beauty of our South African Jewish community is where we can live so proudly Jewish. In other places, people, I guess, assimilated in the melting pot. And what's the idea of a melting pot? Where all individual components eventually lose their own character. Everybody becomes the same. That's the inevitable outcome. The only question is a question of time. And unfortunately, that was the question that many people faced. Do we blend in secularly, or do we self-segregate religiously, which was the other extreme? That was another way people saw it, and growing up in New York, that was a very common sight. And you could still go to New York and find many segregated Jewish communities. That's not a ghetto that was imposed upon them. That's self-choice. Now, there's no persecution in those communities. I grew up pretty much in such a community. Again, the advantages are great. We have the privacy to live our lifestyle without any interference, without anybody imposing any rules and regulations on us, and with no boundaries to have the outside influences now. That was another perspective, to prevent the negative results of assimilation. And when Jews saw their relatives segregating into society, they felt, now we are going to be in a better position. And so the religious group responded by creating these islands amidst the seeds of assimilation. They erected virtual ghetto walls to protect the sanctuary of holiness within. Within this enclave, this is a ghetto of choice, so to say, and have no outside influence of the outside world. Again, that's another perspective. And that's the tzaddik and pelts. The tzaddik and pelts that we discussed a couple of weeks back in the Parsha of Noach was, as long as I'm safe, put on the coat, and even though it's cold outside, I'll be warm, and forget about everybody else. And that perspective is very common, and many Jewish communities self-isolate in that way. They live they live in the spiritual cocoon, and that's wonderful. Now, this debate is ongoing. Which way should it be? Okay? And I think we all have that debate inside ourselves some way or another. Everybody agrees that Hanukkah, we have to light a menorah. The question is as follows. From the secular perspective, the question is, and this is where Chabad gets it from both sides, we don't have to parade our religious beliefs. If we do that, we're taking a step backward. The lower profile we keep, the more accepted we are in society. If we celebrate our distinctiveness, we're pushing away those who would embrace us otherwise. It's a step away from progress. It reminds our neighbors and our coworkers about how different we are. We don't want that. We want the melting pot. Better, you know what, light your menorah at home. Be Jewish at home. Be like everybody else outside. So that's where we get it from one side. On the other side, we get it from the religious, the ultra-Orthodox community. Our own mishpacha. What do they say? I mean, all Jews are one mishpacha. Why are you going out there, exposing yourself You know what kind of risk that is? To put yourself to put yourself out there? Don't put yourself into a position where you're going to be influenced by all the goyishkeit out there. Better to light your menorah in your own home, in your own community, in your shul. Don't expose yourself, your soul, to the tainted environment of the outside world. So you see where Chabad's getting attacked from both sides. Both groups have found unlikely allies in their view that the menorah belongs only in the home. It's a personal commemoration of our holiday. Don't share it with the rest of society. The Haredim are telling us, don't risk yourself to exposure to outside. The secular society is telling us, spare ourselves embarrassment. So how are we supposed to keep up our menorahs? In fact, I've seen tweets about how is it possible that Chabad is representing us at the White House? Because for years, for decades, Chabad was being opposed by everybody. The Haredim on the right, the secular on the left. And that's why Chabad is running the public menorahs. So let's see what was the Rebbe's approach, what was the Rebbe's perspective. And if we could see it from the Rebbe's perspective, we will understand the Rebbe's idea. And the Rebbe quoted a verse from the Torah in Devarim, that you are amongst the people of the world, of the land, and you should observe your mitzvahs, the Torah says. Do what you have to do, because you are God's chosen people, and you have to be a light unto the nations. The Torah is telling us that it's not a matter of you're different than everybody else, and to hide it. No, you have to be a light to the nations of the world. We have to be influencing the world with good. The Torah says, for that is your wisdom and your understanding in the eyes of the people, that they will hear the statutes, the mitzvahs of the Torah, and they will compliment us and say that this is a great, wise, and understanding people. But if you're hiding, you think you'll have an opportunity to be that light, to be that influence? How are you going to be a light unto the nations if you're hiding your light? If you're not sharing the brilliance of your shine? The prophet Isaiah says that you have to be a or lagoyim. It's in our scriptures. So we are charged with the mission of being a light unto the nations of the world. The goal is not just to achieve some kind of passive respect. We have to do something to earn that respect. How are we earning that respect? You want to be respected? Be proud of your heritage. Be proud of your identity. The Radak was lived over a century ago, a millennia ago. Lived in the times of the Radak lived in the times in the 10th century, and he talks about that we have to share the Noachad laws with the nations of the world. We have to teach the nations of the world the laws of the 7 laws of Noach. That's part of our mission. We have to be a light unto the nations of the world. You can't hide if you're hiding yourself, how are you going to be a light unto the nations of the world? So this is the Rebbe's idea of spreading that light. Be that light. When you put that menorah in a public space, you're sharing that light. We're not discriminating against anyone. We're sharing, we're inspiring and influencing others to do good as well. That's what it's about. The menorahs are not there to say we're better than anyone. The menorahs are there to say, let's be super spreaders of goodness, of kindness, of acts of routine kindness. That's the ark. And so we have our mission to make the world a better, a more decent and civilized place, to transmit holiness and light into the world. That's our mission. That's what we're doing. And therefore, we have to do our part. You could ask, why have Jews not done it before? Maybe there were certain times in history when when it wasn't ripe yet. Okay? There were times throughout our history that we simply weren't in a practical position to fulfill that mandate. Jews were being persecuted, Jews were being slandered, there was discrimination, there was all types of problems. And now that the opportunity to positively influence those around us is here. Let's not hide. Carpe diem, we say, right? Seize the moment. Now that we have full and equal rights with the Western world, we have an opportunity in this country and most others that we're able to share that light and to be the lamplighters that we discussed yesterday, which is our mission, our purpose, what we are here for. Let's do it. Let's do exactly that. Let me share with you another quote from Chief Rabbi Jonathan Sachs. He said, what if non-Jews no longer look down on Judaism as inferior to Christianity, to Islam, to Buddhism, or Enlightenment universalism? What if they actually respected it as a source of wisdom and inspiration? He says, these are no longer what ifs. They are the actuality within which we live. Sometimes the Jewish world can seem like a group of passengers on a train who are arguing with such passion that they entirely fail to notice that the train has reached its destination and it's time to get out. That is what happens when we forget that Judaism does not mean living in the past. It means living with the past, but with eyes firmly toward the future. Those are the words of Chief Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sachs. I think it's an important note to realize what he's saying. That's the idea of the public menorah, that we are there to light up the world around us. Yes, in previous generations, it was prudent, it was smart to keep your menorah at home, to mind your own business, to avoid these anti-Semitic reactions, because unfortunately that was the society we lived in then. But the non-Jews of our times, by and large, respect us and look up to us. We just have to be proud of ourselves. I was reading in the book by Rabbi Eliyahu Kitov, the book of our heritage. His daughter, by the way, lived here in South Africa, a very famous artist, forgetting her name. But we have some of her nice paintings around. I believe, in fact, this picture right here. What's that?
Naama Notman
Yes. Where does she live now?
in Israel.
In Israel, okay. She's a famous artist here. So this is what her father wrote. Okay, it's the book Sefer Todas, the book of our heritage. She says, in the sacred works of our people, the following is recorded. And he writes, whenever the Torah or the sages refer to the oil used to light the menorah, an allusion is intended to the wisdom of the heart and the thought of the mind. When the Greeks entered the Beis HaMikdash and defiled the oil, they blemished the thought and feelings of the majority of the people of Israel, who began to accept that the wisdom of the Greeks contained enduring reality. Despite all the Greeks had done to defile the thoughts of the people of Israel, they still remained a modicum of light in their hearts, a single spark of true wisdom which enabled them to know that they were sacred and had been chosen from among the nations. The nations of the world were destined to follow Israel's light rather than Israel follow theirs. And he quotes, but a miracle occurred and the oil burned for 8 days. And therefore, he says, Rabbi Kitov, Naama's father, he writes, heaven, and by the way, he lived in our time. He passed away in the late 70s. He's written a monumental works on Judaism. The book that I love reading is the book of our heritage, which I try to read every week, different, because he takes the whole year and shares with you insights and stories on the celebration. For example, now I'm celebrating Hanukkah. That's why I was reading this and sharing it with you. And he says, what is that miracle today? Heaven came to our assistance, and that spark of true wisdom was fanned into a flame of illumination in perpetuity. Because think about it then. In the Hanukkah story, many Jews assimilated into Hellenistic society of the time. And this is what the Rebbe would tell us. When we light the menorah outside, it's not just for ourselves, it's to light up the whole world. The world has woken up to listen to the message that we carry. And it's our time to wake up and change those policies that have, in the past, where Jews were afraid. Whether it's the ultra Haredi community that says, no, we have to hide from society because we don't want to be influenced by it. Because if you're proudly Jewish, we've discussed this many times in our shiurim, the law when it comes to salting meat is I did the Torah lemiflat lebala, which means as long as you are exuding, you are not absorbing. That's talking about the salting of the meat. As long as it's extracting the blood from the meet, it's not going to re-penetrate it. And the same thing our sages tell us, that when we are influencing the world around us, then we won't be influenced by it. And it's high time for us to realize the world respects us when we respect ourselves, when we are proud of who we are. And so the public menorah is a chance for us to take our Judaism into the streets and to influence the nations of the world around us. The Rebbe's message to the world was acts of routine kindness. That's what he said to the news reporter the day before he suffered his debilitating stroke in 1992. The Rebbe said to CNN, we need more acts of kindness. That's what's going to make the world a better place and bring Mashiach. Let's be proud of our identity. Today, we celebrate religious freedom. Thank God. And so we have to realize that the menorah is an opportunity for us to encourage others, to promote more light and goodness, to raise awareness of the 7 Noahide laws. That's what we're able to do. Each one of us is able and capable, and we should do exactly that. We should realize our freedom of religion is freedom, not freedom from religion, but freedom to practice our religion freely in the world and to influence and inspire others to do exactly the same. And as I do every year Hanukkah, I love to show you this picture that I took at the Brandenburg Gate. I think they even have a bigger and brighter menorah there now. But I was there 10 years ago on Hanukkah with the JJMC, the Johannesburg Jewish Male Choir, and it was quite a sight to be at the giant menorah lighting at Brandenburg Gate. And I watched it again this year, and it happens every year. This is a very place where they decided the final solution for the Jewish people, where Hitler decided there would be no Jew left in the 1930s. Here we are, nearly a century later. We don't just survive, but we thrive. And I was here with the Johannesburg Jewish Male Choir on Hanukkah 2011. And we watched the giant menorah lighting at Brandenburg Gate. And it was a sight to behold. Where less than a century ago, 80 years ago, Jews were being burned here. Not a Jew was able to be found at this site in 1941. 78 years ago, Jewish books were being burned in this place. And today, the menorah shines bright in this very spot. This is one of the proudest pictures I've taken of Hanukkah. Besides, of course, for our giant menorahs. But to tell us that we have to celebrate our identity, be proudly Jewish, and to share and spread that light around the world and to all those around us. So don't think it's just a little bit of light. I get tremendous feedback about our giant menorah and about the menorah kits that we send, about all the good that we do. And I need to conclude today by asking all of you to be part of our campaign to spread the light this Hanukkah. We are raising funds, much needed funds, to bring more brightness to the world. And I want you all to be part of this campaign. We're going to try to raise 1.8 million. We need you. We're going to go live tomorrow, please God, on charity.com/SOS, which stands for Smile on Seniors, where you can donate to the campaign, where you can help us reach our goal. Thank you all so much. Wishing you all a freilichen Chanukah. Tonight, join us for the giant menorah lighting at Santon City, 6:45 p.m. with Israel's ambassador. We'll have Chanukah gelt drop and live music, and look forward to see you all there. Zayka everyone.